the one thing that you can pretty much rest assured of is that if you feel a certain way, there's somebody else out there who's feeling a similar way and is going through something similar right now. So there's endless opportunities to connect with them. And the one thing that I try to push myself to do in those interactions is to be authentic and to be real and to share and to be vulnerable as an artist and to open up a little bit. And I feel like some of the times that I've been the most effective in doing that are the times that had the greatest impact on somebody else.
G Diesel.
What's up, my brother? How are you?
Oh, right now I'm living the dream. What a surreal
That's
moment.
wonderful to hear, man. Oh, well, hey, man, like I said, it's an honor to be here, brother. And like I said, I think you have many more surreal moments to come, but I'm humbled by the honor to be here, man.
Yeah, dude, you have been an inspiration for my life, and I know many others for the past over maybe 2 decades now, especially with your effect in the industry and what you've done. But give some people the background on yourself. Who's G Diesel?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thank you for even saying that, man. I got, I'm neck deep in the process of trying to become a better version of myself every day, build a better brand every day, be a better dad every day, be a better businessman every day. And there's 1,000, almost a limitless amount of ways that I need to improve. So your kind words humble me, and and don't think that I don't use those as inspiration to try to live up to that. So thanks for having me, first of all.
Yeah.
Okay, so ask me that question again.
Yeah. So who are you? Break it
All
down a little bit. I know you're a full-time dad, business
Yeah.
owner, writer, author, filmmaker, and I still got GCode Volume 1.
Nice,
My
man.
go-to.
Beautiful. Yeah, man. I'm all those things you mentioned. I'm also just regular dude from Jersey / Pennsylvania. Working class kid. Have kind of a diverse background, sort of educationally and in terms of my influences that brought me to this moment here. I like you said, founder, operator, GCode Nutrition. We're in our 6th year in business. Trying to build this brand. I worked in the industry now, including freelance for about 20 years, almost my entire adult life, but have had other artistic enterprises and endeavors that I've been a part of during that period. And yeah, man, just regular dude trying to do better every day, man. That's all.
What a ride. I mean, I remember being in high school and waiting for the next Diary of a Madman to post on the Animal Pack website. I've never felt more fueled mentally to attack whatever I'm going to do than those articles. What inspired those articles?
Man, it's funny, right? So a lot of time I go back and I talk about sort of those early animal years, right? And I got the opportunity to work trade shows and write for the animal website when I was like, I don't know, 22, 23 years old. And it was like a dream come true because I was getting paid to write and I was getting a supplement allowance every month and I was working these trade shows. And at a certain point, the gentleman who was like, who had given me the gig, it was kind of like early in the sort of concept of blogging, but said, "Hey man, would you want to take a crack at a blog?" And I'm like, I'm like, I feel like I've read a blog, but I don't even know what that is. And what he basically meant was just like sort of short form, little entries that dealt with different topics and basically stuff that was just on my mind. And so it was like largely philosophical and it was mostly just influenced by observations or my day-to-day life and what I was going through, what I was experiencing as a, young man trying to find his way in the world. And
Sure.
One of the things that, has informed my life to this point and any other time I've decided to try to write something or create something or anything along those lines, which is the idea that um, the one thing that you can pretty much rest assured of is that if you feel a certain way, there's somebody else out there who's feeling a similar way and is going through something similar right now. So there's endless opportunities to connect with them. And, you know, the one thing that I try to push myself to do in those interactions is to be authentic, real, and to share and to be vulnerable as an artist and to open up a little bit. And I feel like some of the times that I've been the most effective in doing that are the times that had the greatest impact on somebody else. And you know, my philosophy on all this stuff in terms of because, you know, a lot of the time I think like it takes a little bit of audacity or ego to share your perspective with the rest of the world, because in doing so you're kind of presupposing that anybody gives a shit or that
Yeah.
or that you have any right or authority to speak you know, in some kind of commanding way, right? So I always try to get across to people that when I share these things, it's not me telling them how to live or you know, what they should be doing or you know, giving them some sort of dogma to live by. It's more, here's a real dude, here's what he's going through, and he's just sharing these experiences and his thoughts and his, you know, perspectives with you, and you do with that as you will, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you created a lot of mantras and anthems, like with the "Go Hard" line.
Right.
I mean, what was your favorite one you made?
Oh man, you know, I that's a tough one, man. You're putting me on the spot. I gotta think, man.
Dude, the amount of
You know,
T-shirts and like
yeah,
screenshots I
no,
have of that. Oh man.
no, that's awesome, man. You know, I mean, you know, it's something that informs G Code, but Earn the Crown is
Hmm.
one of them that stuck with me. And always sort of the idea that you know, greatness is out there for all of us. But it's not going to come easily, you know. And very few of us are just so blessed or gifted that we can we can just stumble into success, you know.
Yeah.
And however you define success, man, that's, you know, everybody's definition of success is completely different. When I say success, I don't mean like making lots of money or having fancy cars or anything like that. I mean like feeling fulfilled, feeling like your life matters and that you're making a difference, right? And you know, however you want to define success, finding happiness, finding meaning in your life every day, right? Very few of us are so gifted, right? Like there's not many LeBrons out there or whatever. But even like, but it's funny because like even that's a discredit, right? It's a disservice
Yeah.
because the guys who are the absolute best at what they do in whatever field they're in or sport they're in or whatever, there was a lot of hard work behind the scenes that took them to get to that point. But you know what I mean, right? So
Yep.
the concept of earning the crown is the thought that like on your own terms, you know, we can be kings or queens of our domain, and the process to get there is going to be hard, and you're going to have to earn that. You're going to have to earn that place. And I'm still fighting to earn it every day in my own life. And it holds me accountable. That concept, you know, that nothing is promised, and you know, nothing is a given, and nothing is owed. And just because you have potential, or just because you have skill, or just because you have natural talent or gifts, doesn't mean that you know you're going to end up where you want to be unless you put the work in, and that's a
Yeah.
reminder every day.
You can earn the crown you seek, but you're gonna have to bleed for it, right? That's what
You're
it
gonna
says on
have
the
to
back of
bleed
this
for it.
shirt.
Yes, man, you're gonna have to bleed for it, you know. And
Yeah.
it sounds dark, and it sounds you know, sort of, you know, angry, or it's graphic in concept, right? But just the thought that whatever your goals and aspirations are, especially the more and more sort of difficult and lofty they are, the more and more hard work that's not glamorous is going to be involved in that process, right? And a lot more sacrifice and a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of stress and a lot of struggle is going to come along that way. You know, so it's out there to get, and I tell myself that every morning, right, and every night.
Yep.
It's out there to get, but it's going to take some hard work and some sacrifice on my part to be worthy of it.
Awesome. Well, before we move on,
Yeah.
what's the drink? What's our sip of
Oh,
choice?
okay. All right. Yes. So mine is a combination of two G Code products. I'll show you what I got here. That's what you're asking me, right?
Oh
What am I
yes. Oh
sipping on?
yes.
All right. What am I sipping on? All right. It is a combination of Life, which is our natural power greens, superfruits, ancient spice, collagen, antioxidant product, and then I also have a scoop of juice in mine, which is carbohydrate, advanced carbs, creatine, EAAs, electrolytes, all that. So I have a scoop of each in my shaker cup. The sort of stuff that I feel like we all could use a little bit more of each day in our lives, especially if you're pushing yourself physically. But the funny thing about those products is that like juice is a little bit more of like a specialized performance product for hard training athletes. But then like Life is a product that I always tell people like, this is cliched because I've said it so many times at this point, right? But it's kind of product that like the hardest training dude in the world, like whoever you think about your gym or the gym you train in, or the place you grew up training in, whoever that dude is in your mind, the archetype of like the hardest training dude you've ever met in your life, like that guy could benefit from Life. But then like our grandmothers could benefit from Life, right?
Yeah.
It's the truth, right?
It's
like
the
our
truth.
kids, literally anybody who's alive and functioning in the world would benefit from having more fruits and vegetables and antioxidants and all of those things in our daily repertoire. More of the stuff that your mom told you to eat more of, and over time you blew off because you're eating chicken and rice every meal, right? Like that's why Life exists, and it's a product that we're really proud of, and I think could help a lot of people, and we're doing what we can to try to get it out there and help it reach more people.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got the same thing. Citrus Sunshine. That's the best flavor, dude.
It is good, man. It is good. It's that's my personal favorite also.
So I do a little weird. I've got it mixed into black raspberry LaCroix.
That's okay.
I like it. No, I like it normal, and then I love fizz. I love some carbonation, dude. And this is a cocktail.
I love it, man. You don't have to explain, like that's so what we do. Like, everybody in my circle, and you probably know, right? But like the thought of like mixing drinks with other drinks, and it's part of the reason the brand exists in the first place, is like our preoccupation with flavors and beverages and all that kind of stuff. Like I've always been into drinks and having like whatever kind of cool diet soda or Crystal Light or Snapple or whatever the hell the thing is. Like I love all that stuff. So like that's a perfect example. My daughter Penelope Beans is a standout athlete, and she's like in her she's only in second grade, but she's like in her fifth season of flag football. And her coach on game day, she brings a shaker cup, and it's like a combination of like Vice with like Diet Mountain Dew or something like that. And every day, and she's like, "Oh, we got to make Coach Dan a new drink." And I'm like, "All right." So it's like, let's see what we have, and we mix up some kind of crazy cocktail. So like that's like baked into the brand, into like our daily life. So I dig that, man. Cool. I dig that you're experimenting with mixing, our products with soda or seltzer water or whatever. It's cool.
Yeah, I leave a container of this at my desk at work, and it's unbelievable just the amount of questions, and like everyone wants to try it, and when everyone tries it, they're like, "Oh, that tastes good. Like this doesn't taste like XYZ other green product. I mean, this is you went hard on this."
Oh man, I love to hear that, man. With Life and just with our products in general, we take flavoring seriously. Like I said, partially because we've just always been into flavors and drinks and that sort of stuff, but also because when I first started training, I lived through the era of where a lot of stuff didn't taste great. And then also, I think about just myself personally as a consumer, right? And even though I'm the type who would choke stuff down if I thought it would bring me closer to my goals or whatever, right? At the same time, I think it's so much easier for people to stick with something and to stay with it for a long period of time and to continue to come back to it if they're actually looking forward to drinking it, right? Like what a difference that makes. And like, Greens products have reputations to being earthy. I joke around and say like, tastes like the undercarriage of your lawnmower, right? Like that's what people think, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can make something that has lively flavor and actually tastes good, and that even they could look forward to drinking over the course of the day, or like use a Greens product and think, wow, this is delicious, like that's a big deal. Yeah. So we take pride in what it tastes like, and I'm glad you like it, man. And I think it does. I think it often surprises people that it actually tastes good,
Came a long way from mixing orange juice, vanilla, protein powder, and fruit punch Super Pump 250 when I was starting out, dude.
There you go.
Day, that was
that doesn't sound too bad, though. It doesn't sound too bad.
It's not too bad. Yeah. Well, so walk me through life a little bit, starting from
Okay.
as early on as you want. But I know you started lifting, I think, when I was born in '94. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
why I've always remembered
Crazy.
that, right? Greg's
Yeah.
picked up the weights when he was, or however old you were, in '94.
Yeah.
Walk me through life since then.
Yeah, man. So right. Yeah. Right around 94, I would say somewhere around that time. I probably around when I was like, you know, third, fourth, fifth grade, I really just fell in love with sports in general, right? And in the process of doing that, it's a different world than it is now, right? Where like, I mentioned my daughter, who's in second grade. Like she's in second grade and she already has like all of these opportunities to like go to clinics and go to these little training sessions and all of this stuff going on, all this coaching, and there's year round just opportunities and little mini camps and all this stuff for her to improve her game. And she's, 8. And I look back at when I first fell in love with sports, and there was so few options in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and like so much of it came down to like what I was willing to do myself, right, and stuff that I would do on my own, by myself, and my own version of training, and that
Yeah.
goes back to when I was probably, um, you know, 11 or 12 years old, right, and so then that over time evolved to like wanting to more seriously incorporate weight training into my regimen. And when I was about 15 or 16, I talked my mom into buying me like a cement filled plastic weight set that, the whole thing was like a 110-pound set, or maybe, something like that. And I had a few other like plates and stuff that I had like bartered or borrowed or whatever for. And I put together this like little makeshift bench um, in my bedroom, my high school bedroom when I was like freshman, sophomore. And I had this little set of dumbbells, and I had, maybe 130 pounds of weights. And I would go there every opportunity I had, and I would do my little workouts, right? And I formulated these workouts, and I got some. And the initial impulse was like to be better at sports, or to like look better in my basketball jersey. Like they're very simple
Yeah.
things, right? It wasn't like there wasn't much to it beyond that. Like, oh, I want to be better, so this is training, and training makes you better, so this is what I'm going to do. And that just was how I was always wired. So around 16, I was working out in my bedroom all the time, and then that summer, my mom got me my first gym membership, and it was like a 6-week gym membership to the Brigantine Fitness Center in Brigantine, New Jersey, right outside of Atlantic City. And from that point forward, I kind of just fell in love with the iron. And I got a little later that year, I talked the owner into giving me a job at the gym. And my senior year of high school, I worked. Imagine this senior year. Senior year of high school, I worked 4:45 in the morning before on Wednesdays before homeroom. I worked 4:45 in the morning, like till 7 a.m. or something at the gym, and then I worked Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. Right, all through my senior year of high school, and that was just because
Good
I was so
Lord.
determined to have a job at the gym. And then like on and off through college, and um, you know, uh, basically throughout the entire time that I lived in South Jersey before moving to Pennsylvania when I was like 27, I somehow had a shift at that gym at some point, every couple of weeks or every month for like 10 years. And so much of the foundation of everything that I do and everything that I am now and our brand and all that stuff is rooted in those early formative years, falling in love with training and sort of building a culture at the gym of all my friends training with me. And those are the early formative moments. And it was throughout that process that I first got my foot in the door with Animal, and myself and my associate Mark Bernardi, who's the director of operations for GCode to this day. He's my friend since like 7th grade. And
That's awesome.
he and I wrote multiple scripts together, and he and I kind of by default started the video program at Animal Universal, which like did the original DVD series with Frank McGrath, if you remember those and all that. Like that was all stuff that we shot and directed and edited. So then that stuff I worked at Universal and Animal for 11 years, and in the process of that, we launched the Go Hard brand. Myself and Travis Dirt Malone launched the Go Hard brand, and then that sort of led to opportunities that allowed us to start GCode, and we're neck deep in that now. But yeah, man, I mean that's that's like in terms of like the iron and all that sort of stuff, and how it relates to my current career and where I stand and all that stuff right now. That's kind of that timeline. Just a lot of years of lifting and thinking about training and obsessing over supplements and nutrition and everything related to the culture. Just like a love story of my entire adult life with the iron, and that going back to workouts in my bedroom when I was a kid.
What about it made you obsess over it, about the weights?
Man, the self-actualization of it all is the thing that always appealed so much to me. I remember conversations with my dad when I was a kid, and it was about sports and that sort of stuff, and I just applied it to everything in my life. But he got across to me. He was a great motivator of mine, and he got it across to me basically like, hey man, I believe in you, and you can pretty much do anything that you put your mind to in this world, but how bad do you want it? Right? And that stuck with me. Like, oh, that's great, man. Oh yeah, that's what you want to do. Awesome. All right, so now what? Right? And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, like we were talking about earning the crown, right? So the thing that I think appealed to me so much about the weight training was that you get out of it what you put into it, and it was only up to me. Like, I didn't have to depend on anybody else really, right? And it was about this sort of internal process and this internal investment, and what can I get out of these daily workouts and this like incremental progress. I've seen it written about the aggregation of marginal gains, right? The concept of like slowly adding to something, right? And over time, it seems like nothing day to day, but over time, it adds up to something really substantial. So, like, I think the thing that made me fall in love with it the most was just the idea that if I stick with this thing and I do it on a regular basis, I'm going to get better at it and I'm going to get a lot out of it. And like, I just apply that sort of basic philosophy to everything, and that was the real thing that appealed to me about it, is that like, all right, this is your own personal challenge, and it's going to do as much for you as you're willing to invest in it. And
Hmm.
are you going to be consistent with it? And no one. And the other thing too, right, is like, let's be honest, right? A lot of this stuff that we're talking about, like, nobody else really gives a shit if you do it or not, right? Like,
Yep.
it's on you. It's on you, buddy, if you really want to do this. And so the only one who's making you go to the gym or do these things is you. And if you don't do it, nobody else really gives a shit, right? So it's like, um, that sort of accountability to myself was something that always spoke to me.
Yeah.
The holding myself accountable and making myself do this thing, sticking to this regimen, sticking to this program on a daily basis, because I want to do it and because I'm challenging myself to do it, and regardless of what anybody else thinks.
Well, you keep what you kill, right? Whatever work you
Sure,
put in, you carry around that with you. Like, you're
sure,
the artist of that. And I think that's a
sure,
beautiful thing, as
yeah,
well as laying the framework for life, the
sure,
discipline, incremental gains. Like, you have to got to understand that. And that comes with this. Everyone, I love the man. If I don't want to bulk up and get huge, if I work out, I'm like,
right,
if it was that easy, I
yeah,
wish it was that easy. I
right,
would be
yeah. That's
huge.
gonna You're right. It's gonna happen accidentally, right? It's like,
Yeah.
that's not how this stuff works. It's not how this stuff works. And like, I think a lot of us, like I was saying, right, like, at first, training to like look better in a jersey, or you're trying to be working out not because they do care, but because you think you're gonna get girls' attention, right? Or
Mhm.
whatever the initial motivation is, that's very superficial, right?
Yep.
And then maybe that transitions to, you're more serious about it, and now it's like, oh, I just want to be as jacked as possible, or oh, I just want to be as strong as possible, right? And those that are still like sort of these basic sort of urges that are very superficial, right? And then over time, though, it evolves to the point where now you're doing it for reasons that are almost entirely personal, right? And it's,
Mhm.
even though it's you still might have goals that are similar to even those earlier goals, where it's because you want to look good, or you want to perform on a high level, or you want to compete, or even things like that. At the same time, I think a lot of it's therapeutic. A lot of it is about your own sort of body chemistry and your own daily regimen, and how important it is for you to have this physical outlet on a regular basis. So and then at a certain point, I know, for me personally, it's become an intellectual pursuit and it's become a spiritual pursuit, right?
Hmm.
And when I say that, I just mean that like I know that my mind functions better. I know I'm emotionally in a better place, and I know I think more creatively, um, and I know that I'm sort of more at peace when I have that outlet and when I've made those sort of physical efforts on a regular basis. Everything seems to function better inside. You know,
Yeah.
mind, body, and soul all seems to kind of um, just work better, function better. You know, it breaks down some. You know, like our filter gets muddied. It just because we're filtering a lot of stuff every day,
Yeah.
right? We're parsing through so much stuff every day, and it's like, all right, how do I clear that filter, and how do I see the world more clearly, and see myself more clearly, and how can I be a better person, a better man, you know, and so much of it I think is sort of keeping that filter clean, and that filter tends to be cleaned in an efficient and effective way, I think, by just pushing yourself physically on a regular basis.
Now, have you always been this creative, like throughout your whole life, like with the writing,
Uh,
filmmaking, or where did that come
yeah,
from?
man. You know, I think the writing just came over time, right? Where you kind of realize that you have like a knack for something, just kind of naturally. You know, as a kid, like I think you know, my folks stressed the importance of like um, knowledge and learning. That was like an important thing in our house. Like my dad was very much a strong dude and an old school dude, and sort of like a lot of the alpha male archetypes that you would think of. But he was also loving, and he would always go out of his way to tell me he loved me and to give me a hug and those sort of things, right? Like he was a very affectionate man, for being as tough and strong as he was. And then
Mm.
also he was very smart. He knew a lot, and so there was a value in my house about knowing stuff, right? And I think in the pursuit of knowledge, you tend to read a lot, and I think reading a lot helps you write better. Just like um, indirectly, like you're just
Yeah.
absorbing more about the written word. Your vocabulary becomes better, right? Sentence structure, storytelling. The more you read, I think you get a little
Yeah.
bit your understanding. Whether you ever manifested in actually writing or not is a different story, but just your understanding of those things becomes better the more you read, right? So I was reading a lot as a kid, and I wouldn't say I was writing a lot as a youngster, but there were things that I would do that were just random, like trying to make my own sports magazine when I was like 12. I remember trying to do that at my aunt's office, and I had like running copies of like baseball cards and writing these stories and like making a cover of a magazine and stuff. I remember doing that. Drawing and coloring was a big thing in my life, and painting. There was always, I always laugh, but there was like I'd go to my grandmother's and my aunts, and there was always like scrap paper, and there was like there was paper there for Greg to like let Greg go color and draw and do that stuff. So I was always drawing superheroes and and wrestlers and all that kind of stuff my whole childhood. And yeah, so like artistic expression was always encouraged, in my growing up, and then it just manifests itself whatever way it does. As when I
Mm.
was in high school, I think I started to realize, or maybe junior high school, I sort of realized that I was good at writing. And you don't think much of it at that point, but then you start to see how it can benefit you. And then through high school and then into college, I got more into watching movies. There was like a big independent film boom, in the 90s and 2000s, and so I was watching more films, and then just like the reading that lends itself to a better understanding of storytelling and writing and that sort of stuff. So just a lot of influences, I think, in my formative years, um,
Yeah.
reinforced that creative urge.
Well, I think like your wealth of knowledge also pours into other things in life too, outside of just the artistic side. Like you've helped me open up my mind to more things, like with just even your comments on Facebook, right? Just
Sure,
your other perspective. Hey, look at it from this perspective,
sure,
you
sure,
know?
sure,
And but you do that in a loving way, right? In a way that you're
man.
like is genuine.
Yeah. Man, every so often, right? Like I feel that like, you'll be on Facebook and a lot of time, like I'll be there with whatever perspective I have on whatever thing. And I see people comment, and a lot of time you just like, you blow it off and you don't even bother responding to anything. But then every so often I would see somebody that I like. a guy like
Oh,
you
well,
or
thanks.
somebody else, right? And I would think to myself, and I would hear their perspective, and I would read it, and I'd say, okay, I kind of understand where they're coming from and why they see it like that. And then every so often, I would respond maybe in a way that was different than what the statement they were making. And then I think to myself, like, here's what I know. Here's what I know. I know that this guy's reading this comment and knows, one, I'm not coming at him.
Yep.
2, that I actually like him. 3, they like me and respect me. And 4, they know I'm not an asshole. Not to part of my French, right? But they know that I'm not a jerk, that I'm not a troll, that I'm not trying to elicit a response from them. It's just like, hey, it's your buddy or your brother or your boy who's like, did you ever think of it this way? And so I said, I know that any of the guys that I interact with are thinking to themselves, man, I didn't think of it like that, or man, I disagree with him, but I really like G, and I know I see where he's coming from, and then maybe that little thing alone changes somebody's perspective a little bit. And like I think to myself, like, oh, that's awesome. And the other thing too is that for me to ever respond to somebody's comment about whatever the hell it is, right, their take, I have to know where they're coming from. So in order for me to respond in whatever way I'm going to and provide my perspective, I kind of have to understand yours. And I think to myself, like, man, like what a big deal that is in terms of like how we move forward as a society, right? Is the thought of like, because one of the biggest blessings that I ever had in terms of like my parents, and how I was brought up and things I'm thankful for, right, is the concept of empathy, right? Like, and empathy always just kind of comes down to the thought of like walking a mile in the next man's shoes, or intellectually putting yourself in the next man's shoes and saying like, okay, here's this thing that I don't quite understand, but let me try to see it from that person's perspective, and now I get it.
Yeah.
All right, I get it. Like, and there's almost except the most extreme ridiculous things, there's almost no reasonable perspective that even if you disagree with, you can't step back from and say, okay, I get why that person sees it that way, and now it makes sense to me, and maybe now instead of being so black and white, I understand the gray a little better, and then I realize maybe my foot's kind of in the gray because of how this topic applies to my life. And I think, man, like if we were all able to do that more often, myself included, if we were all able to do that more often, like I feel like the human species would be in a better place, maybe. You know what I mean?
I mean, we don't have to. That's the thing that people, I think, misunderstand. We don't have to agree on every single thing, right? The world will be super boring.
Of course.
But there has to be like a foundation of mutual respect.
Of course.
In order to move forward to have this dialogue with somebody. Right. And I think it's awesome because, I mean, there's not many, green light thinking of who I can have a conversation with that doesn't go off the rails. Can't really think of any other than like whenever you send a comment, right? And it's, and I appreciate
That's not
you
good.
doing that.
That's not good. Like, we're better than that.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And the other thing too that I realized too, that in general, we have a lot more in common. Human beings have a lot more in common than they do that are at odds or in opposition to one another. And like, if we focused more on all the things that we have in common, I think we'd be in a much better place instead of like allowing these little things. And I know they don't necessarily seem little, right? But these things that are more like the details, if we allow the details to sort of overwhelm us in our perspective on life, I feel like it gets in the way of finding all the common ground that we have, and that's a shame, and that holds us back. It holds us back in so many ways, you know.
That's the beautiful thing about the weights and stuff, right? That's a foundational mutual love of something that people can come together with. It's like with anything, video games, sports, whatever it is. Hey, we've got a talking point. Let's get to know each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's not blow up the things that we're different with. Let's come together on things we're the same with.
Very much so.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. All these things I think play into what you embody as the GCode, right? Like with the book, with Go Hard, with GCode Nutrition. What is living by the GCode?
I mean,
Unpack
it's
that.
fun. Yeah. Living by the G code, it's really living by your own personal code, right? And like going back to what we talked about earlier, and like Diary of a Madman and things that you read in it that spoke to you, it was because I was just talking about my life and my perspective and my experiences and sharing them with you. And it doesn't mean that what you were going through was exactly the same as what I was going through, but you felt similar impulses, you felt similar emotions, you've been through similar things, right? And in that same way, right? In that same way, we all sort of bring our own perspective and baggage to the table in our everyday lives and interactions, right? And we each have our own expectations in life. We each have our own standards that we live to, right? And the one thing that I try to do for myself every day, and that I've tried to do for myself my whole life, which is maybe a little different, is that I've been cognizant of those things and tried to define those things for myself, right? And I feel like we all have goals, we all have dreams, we all have aspirations, and we all have certain philosophies about life, right? So like when I wrote the book, right, it was lessons for living an extraordinary life in the real world, right? That was like the subtitle, right? Lessons for living
Hmm.
an extraordinary life in the real world, right? And when I talk about the G Code products, and the brand in general, it's real people in the real world doing extraordinary things, right? Like that's who the products are made for, right? And the idea being that like um, I'm not here to tell you how to live. You already know who you are, or you're already discovering who you are, or you're already asking those questions of yourself, right? You already know what your goals and your dreams and your aspirations are. So the idea behind our brand is like helping you to be more comfortable and open yourself up to sort of defining who you are, what your goals are, what it is you want out of life, how you want to be seen, how you want to see yourself, and then working towards that, right? So it's like we each like I said, there's nothing dogmatic about the G code or our brand or anything like that. It's more just um, us encouraging you to be your best self on your terms, right? Excellence on your own terms. That's what our brand helps to support and encourage is you finding, you defining your own code for yourself and seeking excellence on your own terms every day. And we want to play a support role in that process, right? Not only um, telling you that that's okay and good, um, but encouraging you and empowering you along that way and supporting you. And if it's the written word, or if it's a cool T-shirt, or if it's some sort of inspirational graphic, or if it's an actual product, an actual supplement or whatever that helps your process, then we're doing our job, and I'm doing my job, and I'm sharing the gift, right? Like we all have things that we're strong in, things that we're better at,
Hmm.
things that we need to improve on, right? And it's like once you define those things, and then you're able to get comfortable with trying to share them with others, like you're doing with this podcast, right? You're taking interests, you're taking concepts, you're taking your own skills and abilities, you're taking your own effort, your own time, your own resources to share with the rest of the world because you think some of this stuff could be valuable to somebody else, right? And it's like that's what we're trying to do every day. Take the things that we think that we do well, the things that we think we can contribute, and trying to give them to others to empower them on their journey.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job. And one thing, I mean, you do an excellent job with is brand message. I mean, you live it, you breathe it, everything is based around it. What is a big piece of advice or your biggest takeaway from your
Yeah.
journey with G Code or really Animal or anything you've done to keep working on the brand message? Like,
Right.
how do I want to ask this question? Um, like, how would you, if there's someone who's wanting to create a brand or a
Yeah.
business company, whatever, what is what are the best steps to take to create a brand message and embody that?
I mean, I think it becomes easier if that brand message and your motivations are rooted in your own passions, right? So like if you really love this thing, if you really love this culture, if you really love this endeavor, right? Then there's nothing that you won't do for it, and it will flow naturally from you, right? and people feel that, right? It feels real, it feels authentic, and then you have to live it every day. Is the other part of it, right? Like I always say, you can't talk it if you don't live it, right? So it's like, in terms of your own accountability and whatnot, right? Like if I'm not doing the work necessary every day to pursue my dreams and to chase my dreams to make them a reality, what right do I have to tell others that they need to be doing that themselves? So like, I have to keep it real with myself every day. So you know, it, let your passions lead you. Make sure it's authentic, and then be consistent. Is the other thing too, right? Like a lot of the best branding. Um, it's funny to say, right? But a lot of the best branding is boring. And when I say boring, means that like you're hammering the same concepts over and over again. Now it should and has to, and like we're in that process too. Like it has to evolve, just as we're evolving as human beings. A brand has to evolve and to grow, right? Just as a person has to, right? So that it has more impact, reaches more people, changes with the times in a positive way, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
any living entity needs to do that to survive and advance, right?
Yeah.
So I think, be consistent, be passionate, and live it yourself. You have to live it yourself every day, or people feel it. People feel that disconnect. And I don't ever want people to feel like I don't believe in what I'm saying, what I'm selling. Um, I want it to always feel real and authentic and organic in that way. So
What
let it
have
be
been some
real.
of the biggest
Let it
struggles?
come from you.
I love that. What have been
Yeah.
some of the biggest struggles with just growing G code? I mean, I
Oh
doubt
man,
staying
yeah.
true to the brand message is one because I mean,
No,
yeah,
no,
that's
no,
huge.
yeah, no. I would say the challenges are, a lot of it's logistical and a lot of it's obvious too, right? Like, um, one of the challenges is that it's a huge industry and it's highly competitive. And there's only so much shelf space. And when I say shelf space, I don't just mean in stores and brick and mortars. I mean like in people's minds,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, how do you clear off some shelf space in their mind for your brand, your product, right? So yeah, just general brand awareness, letting people know you're out there. Um, you know, uh, that is a huge hurdle at all times, right? And then another aspect of it is that, like, coming into this endeavor, uh, I had many boxes checked in terms of like things that I brought to the table and like sharpened swords that I had, right, for this battle. But I'm not a sales guy, right? So like by default, I kind of had to become that, and I'm still evolving in that way where like sales are critical to the brand existing and growing and flourishing and prospering. And I had to turn from like sort of a creative and a marketing guy into focusing on more nuts and bolts stuff and stuff that um, you know impacts the bottom line more directly, right? So that's like an evolution that I'm still in the process of, in a place that we need to be stronger. Um, so that's another challenge. And another thing, and it's funny, right? Like I laugh about it and I say it out loud to people because it makes me laugh, is the thought that like you spend every day praying for more sales, right? Praying for more sales, working for more sales, right? But as you create more sales and sell more stuff, you need to be creating more products in inventory. Right? And it
Yeah.
seems so obvious, right? But like that is one of the big challenges, is
Hmm.
like, how do you grow and create more sales while keeping stuff in stock, right?
What
Like,
a
I don't know
balance.
if you've ever, it's like a constant
Yeah.
struggle, right? Constant struggle, right? And like, I don't know if you've ever read the book. You should highly recommend Shoe Dog,
Shoe
which
dog.
is Phil Knight, who started Nike. It's his memoirs,
Okay.
and it's like the first. Like, here's the thing: like the first 18 years of the brand, before, like, and don't get me wrong, in the 70s, like they had caught on and stuff, whatever. But there's a long stretch of at least a decade, way before Jordan brand, which is like 85, 86, way before that, right? Way before they became a publicly traded company, way before any of that, right? Where basically Phil Knight is trying to grow Nike, and what it is like he's has his shoes. These shoes are being made overseas, and there's a boat of shoes that will land on U.S. shores. And by the time that boat lands, he needs to have sold all the last boat, right, to be able to pay for the next boat, right? The next slightly bigger boat of shoes coming over needs to have been paid for with the last boat's profits, right?
Yeah.
And it's a cycle like that for like a decade, right? And like when once you're neck deep in it, you get it. You totally get it. And like so like that's like this very obvious logistical challenge, but it's like yeah, how do you just keep stuff in stock as you grow? You know, so like I feel that. But it's a crazy part of the process. So yeah, there's nuts and bolts things in terms of growing that, you know, and growing pains and figuring that out on a daily basis that we need to get better at. And then also, you know, just like the thought of like, you know, a tree falls in the woods, right? Like you could build the best brand in the world, but if not enough people know it exists, then, you know, is it really that great a brand, right? And I know that that's a really, that's not a sort of a bleak and negative way of looking at it, and that's not my type, right? I'm not trying to be pessimistic or cynical, but the truth of the matter is, right, like that tree falls in the woods, if nobody's there, did it make a noise, right? Same deal, right? So it's like, you build this brand, you believe in it, you believe in the quality of the products, you believe in the messaging. How do I reach more people? And it's that constant effort to reach more people, you know?
I mean, you and everything you did with the animal, you created influencers in a sense, right? Like you kind of, dude, the posters that I had on my wall in high school and stuff of, you know, Frank, everybody, Evan, like all those guys, like you helped create influencers with that.
Sure.
And now that's like what seems like all the market is at this point. Like if you have a brand, you just pay an influencer.
Right, sure.
What is that dynamic like?
I mean, you know, like I can't speak to that dynamic in a way, and maybe I need to, right? But I can't speak to that dynamic in a way that's informed because like we've never really had anybody involved with GCode who's a mercenary, right? So pretty much anybody who's ever been out there speaking highly of the brand or representing the brand from on a small level to a bigger level, right? They all came to the brand organically and naturally. So it was either a friendship that grew over time, or somebody who just happened upon the brand, liked the products, liked how it looked or felt.
Yeah,
it meant something to them, and then they kind of came aboard in whatever fashion, right? So, I mean, I know that there's value to that kind of marketing, obviously, and the thought of just like figuring out this person who's an influencer out there, you know, taking the resources involved and putting it into, you know, cutting a check to that person, and then, you know, it's like South Park and the underpants gnomes. I don't know if you've ever seen that, right? But it's like the method of business. They're these little gnomes who come and steal the underwear, right? Myself and Mark always talk about it, right? But like plan A is steal all the underwear. Plan B, and then it's blank because they haven't figured out. You know, step A is collect all the underwear. Step B is blank because they haven't figured it out yet, and then step C is collect millions of dollars, right? So it's like figuring out B, right? And like that's the whole process, is figuring out that it's step B in that process. And like, you know, maybe it is as simple as figuring out who that influencer is and having a lot of cash to throw at them, and then they talk to their people, and all of a sudden your brand is huge. Like, I don't know. I don't know, you know. But I know that's a business model. I know that's a business model, and I can't say it's not effective, but it's just not where it's not the place that we've ever operated in.
And I know a lot of people respect that too, because there's a lot of, and I'm not going to throw shade at anybody, but you know, you hop on Instagram, you look at it, you see someone who's got, you know, 60,000 followers, right? Well, and then they just start posting up this brand you've never heard of. 6 months later, brand's moving, whatever.
Sure.
But I mean, dude, Josh Halliday, for instance, right?
Sure.
God, that guy was one of the biggest like inspirations for me in bodybuilding for the longest time. Yeah, when I was gonna go compete at Teen Nationals, he's like, dude, you can stay with me. I'm like, yo, Josh Halliday told me I could stay with him if I was gonna compete. Oh, dude, I got to get out there. Fortunately, got hurt, couldn't go.
Right.
But like those are the kind of people you want to represent the brand, and
Of course.
I know you care about that a lot, and I
Sure.
think that is what's so well respected.
You know, man, it's just like the idea, ideally, and this isn't all, you know, this isn't foolproof, and it's not always the case, but the goal is that, like anything, right? Like the people who are associated with your brand, you want them to sort of line up with your values, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like the thing about Josh is that he's got this exceptional physique, but he's also just a good dude, and he's a family man, and
Yep.
his values line up with my values. It's one of the reasons he and I have always been friends, but then it also makes him like an ideal guy to represent the brand. So like the
100%.
fact that, just for example, he would invite you to crash at his place tells you what kind of a person we're talking about, right? So like somebody like that, you know, is the kind of guy that we want to be associated with GCode. And the funny thing about it is that, like, you know, don't get me wrong, you might have a big check that you can cut to somebody, and that influencer might be a guy of the same sort of, you know, character as a Josh Holiday, but you don't know that until you get to know them. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
those relationships are very, you know, sort of clinical and sterile, and it's you know, like I said, it's mercenary. It's mercenary in that way, where here's this person who can do this thing. I cut them the check. They do this thing. You know, and I don't know them as people, and they don't know me as a person. They don't know the people who are involved in the brand as a person. They, you know, as people, they don't know what we're all about. They don't, and this is not, and this isn't being cynical, right? But they don't know what we're all about. Maybe they don't give a shit, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's just cut the check kind of person, you know, kind of perspective, and I get that, and I'm not even knocking that. You know, I know that everybody's got to do what they got to do to you know, keep the lights on, and I respect that. You know, it's one of those things like we were talking about when you were saying like what you sort of respect in regards to the marketing in the industry and whatnot and all that. And I'm the same way, man. And I look at things through a similar lens, you know. But when anybody asks me about like some big company, some ultra successful company, right? Like before, first of all, I don't talk shit on anybody, but even before it gets to that point, I always preface it by saying, hey, man, I tip my cap to anybody who can be successful in this game, because it's not easy. You know, like, so I no matter who it is, no matter what it is, like before I say anything that could even be, you know, even be slightly shaded as negative or critical, I'll say that because it's true. You know, it's true.
Yeah.
So like I tip my cap to anybody who's figured it out, because it ain't easy. You know.
Yeah. So last few things here, and I know
Yeah.
you're a super busy guy.
Man,
Walk
of
me
course,
through
I
a
know
day in the
you are
life.
too, man.
Walk me through the day in the life of Greg.
Just an average regular day?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Okay, so you know, I get up, you know, relatively early. All it all depends. You know, 5:30. I try to start my day doing cardio. I do fasted cardio every day, and it's not even for physique reasons, but I feel like it's good for my mind. Tara says it's like my zen, right? But just the idea of kind of starting your day and getting the blood flowing, and I sip on some Vice, and I wake up. I slowly wake up, right? And through that process, I often do work on my phone and whatnot, and that's kind of like the rest of my day, essentially, right? So like, you know, we get our girls up, we get them off to school, and then basically for the rest of the day, I'm doing things related to GCode, plus doing the other stuff I have to do and fitting that in whenever I can. So a lot. I talk about my phone as being my robot appendage, right? It's like
Yep.
the robot extension of my entity, right? And they talk about like the future where like we're part virtual, and I'm like, or not virtual,
Nah.
you know what I mean?
Miss
And I
me with
say
that.
that I of course, but I think about how much I rely on this thing, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm already there, right? Like this is an extension of
It's
my
wild.
mind, and is so related to me doing the business of the G Code brand on a daily basis, and then also my interactions with the rest of the world, right? So
Yeah.
you know, we get my girls off to school, and then I'm working on my phone, largely in a sales capacity a lot of the time, and then you know, hammering emails, trying to figure out, you know, trying to answer questions / ask questions related to the day-to-day operations of the brand. You know, put out some fires. I still do a good amount of customer service, you know, in that regard. So like oftentimes if something goes sideways or we have consumer questions, a lot of the time I will still be fielding those along with a you know, core group of our people. Um, and then and that's basically my whole day. I say, like, in terms of my interactions with the brand, and I try to tell this to people, especially like prospective vendors or people who use our products. Like, I'm 25/8 366, right? So, like, I'm always there in some capacity, and I'm trying to stay on top of things to the best of my ability all the time. And it can be you know that can be stressful, and there can be some anxiety built into that sort of thing, or it can just be overwhelming at times, but it's a blessing. Like, then that's the thing I always remind myself of, and I remind other people of. Like, when I find myself really busy with the business of GCode, busy is a blessing, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
the flip side of that, where there's nothing going on and you got nothing to do, that's not good, right? So, like, I try to do my best to avoid that. Beyond that, man, I get my beyond being 25/8 366 for GCode. I get my training in 6 days a week. I lift, so that's an important part of my life. Sometimes 7 days a week, but mostly six. I'm on a 6 day bro split that I've been on
Oh yeah.
my whole life. My whole life, basically. The 20 plus years that we talked about. I've been on some kind of similar split to that. So I get my workouts in. I try to make that's an important part of my day, to make sure I did that. I in terms of being a dad and whatnot, I coach. I coach
Nice.
basketball two seasons in a row. I coach my daughter's basketball team. This past season, I had two of them on the same team, which was awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then for several seasons now, I've been an assistant coach, an offensive coordinator for my daughter's flag football team. So I do that too. Those are cool outlets, man. In terms of, like, talk about one of the things that you realize is, like, stress management is a big deal, and it's cool to have productive things in your life that allow your mind to decompress a little bit, right? So, like, while I joke around and I say, like, there's always an app in the background, no matter what I'm doing, that's working on GCode stuff in my mind, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
an app back here that you and I are having this whole conversation, but that thing's still running back
Oh
there,
yeah.
right? Like, trying to figure shit out, or problem solving, or whatever the hell, right? Thinking about stuff, worrying about stuff, making a list. That's always back there, working in the background while we have this conversation. So that's always the case. But, like, if there's opportunities that you can immerse yourself in, that help sort of distract you and clear your mind, and can be like positive outlets that help others, like, for example, working with kids with sports, like, that's a great thing. So, like, I'm blessed to be able to do that. And, man, beyond that, man, it's my life is, I would say, very similar to everybody else's, right? It's just um, trying to do everything I can to do better every day in terms of my job and my career, and trying to be a better dad every day, and trying to keep food on the table, and getting my workouts in, and you know, figuring out what's next, and how to continue to push myself, continue to evolve, as a man, and as a businessman, and as a dad, and all that. So, my challenges are the same as everybody else's. And my days, a lot of my days aren't exciting and are certainly not glamorous, but I'm very blessed to have them, man. Very blessed to have them, and very thankful for the opportunity to chase this dream every day. It's not something I take for granted. You know,
Yeah. You need to
I
take that
said,
step out.
I said, like, it's a phrase that I come back to in terms of mantras, right? But, like, in terms of, like, gratitude, right? Like, all the things we take for granted are the only things that matter, right? So,
Mm.
like, every
Wow.
day that you get out of bed and you're healthy, you know, and and the little things, like, it's not little at all, man, right? But every day that you get out of bed and you're healthy, and your family's safe and they're healthy, and you got a roof over your head, and you got food on your plate, and you have the ability to make yourself better, like, that's that is it puts you in a
That's
very
it.
elite percentile. I had this conversation with buddies on a different podcast, but, like, just those things alone, like checking those boxes, put you in a very elite percentile of the whole world, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you're healthy, you're safe, you got food on the table today, you got a roof over your head tonight, you know, like, and you have the opportunity to improve your life by working hard and, you know, taking your talents and your ambitions and you know, putting some juice and energy behind them. Like, that's a tremendous blessing. So I'm very, very thankful for every day, you know.
That's awesome. All right, I told you I'd have some rapid fire questions.
I like it. All right, cool. I'm
All right.
excited. I'm excited.
Top 3 books that you recommend someone to read, other than Shoe Dog.
All right, yeah. Well, Shoe Dog is the most recent one, man. Let me see. Top 3 books. All right. Well, I was I like Anthony Bourdain's books. Anthony Bourdain is a pretty awesome dude in terms of sort of like a man of the world and a chef and like being into multiple cultures and being a guy who's kind of built himself up and a complicated figure, but an incredibly cool one, somebody I find inspirational. So I was reading Kitchen Confidential recently, which is, once again, it's not about the things that directly impact my life, but I find a lot of value in sort of his world perspective, just culturally and as it pertains to like somebody's journey to become like what he became. Man, I'm trying to think, like classical literature. To Kill a Mockingbird is maybe my favorite book from classical literature. Trying to think.
What's been your most inspiring book?
Oh, my most inspired. I think Shoe Dog is probably my most inspiring book.
Really?
You know, it's fun. It's what's funny is that Malcolm Gladwell has a series of books. He's an awesome author because I'm trying to think more along those lines. It's funny, right? Because you think about what I write and I don't read a lot of that kind of stuff. I don't read much like inspirational, motivational, like, and this is the wrong word, but just take it anyway. Like self-help stuff, like that genre. I don't read a lot of that. I tend to write some of that, but I don't really read a lot of that, right? And don't get me wrong, like I draw inspiration from so many places, but I don't read a lot of that kind of stuff. So, but I'm trying to think of, so Malcolm Gladwell's books, right? There's a book called The Tipping Point, and there's a book called David and Goliath, right? And those are amazing books. They're amazing books because they're a combination of inspirational, philosophical, spiritual, but then they're also like analytical and scientific in their own way, and just like these very interesting and unique perspectives. Like David versus Goliath is about perceived disadvantage and flipping those perceived disadvantages on their head to becoming advantages that actually make you stand apart from everyone else. Right. And so much of that stuff is rooted in your own perspective on it, right? Like, oh, here's this thing about me that isn't great, or that needs work, or that sucks, or here's this circumstance of my life that's holding me back in whatever way, shape, or form. And there's many, and they're all valid, especially for the individual. But maybe a lot of that is how you process it, and you know, and your own perspective on it. And I think, Malcolm Gladwell's book. So The Tipping Point and David and Goliath are two of the ones that jump to my mind that are two of the best. And then another book is funny, and it brings me back to like you talking about Facebook comments and stuff. But a pretty cool book is a book called A People's History of the United States. And the cool thing about the book is that it's a historical document, but instead of being written from the perspective of the people who won the wars, it's written from the perspective of the oppressed cultures in the process. So like you can imagine writing about the Pilgrims, but from the perspective of the Native Americans. Yeah. And how history seems different. Through that lens, history seems different, right? Or you think about like the 17 and 1800s, but instead of, and you know, the Revolutionary War, and everything leading up to the Industrial Revolution, but it's written from like the perspective of like the American slave, right? And you think about like so much of history is written by the dudes who won the war, right? Yeah. And it's like what happens to the other, like what's the perspective of the other people in that process? So that was like an illuminating book, just because
Wow. Yeah.
and like I said, I've always been in pursuit of knowledge, and I think like those unique perspectives that might be a little different than how we read the books in high school and college and elementary school. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. So that's another one randomly. So there's a little history in there. There's a little inspirational, motivational stuff in there. And then, like I said, I think like the stuff. I think Shoe Dog, in terms of entrepreneurship, it's the coolest, most unique story that impacted me the most with regard to entrepreneurship.
That's awesome.
Was those formative years of Nike and what went into it and how crazy it is, and how anybody who aspires to do anything, um, and build something like sort of from the ground up, and all the challenges that are built into it, like you read it and you can relate to so much of it, and it's just crazy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What does Black Hoodie season mean?
Okay, so Black Hoodie season, which we started with Go Hard, and it now lives on through G Code. It's all right. So we made a hooded sweatshirt. We decided one time that we were going to make a hooded sweatshirt, and it was going to be a black hooded sweatshirt that said the words Black Hoodie season on it. And it seems just like clever words on a sweatshirt, right? Like, oh, here's this black hoodie. It says Black Hoodie season on it. But it was sort of the idea that like, and I think it goes back maybe to sports too, right? But maybe it's like seasonal affect disorder, right? But I feel like every fall to winter, folks maybe like take a step back. Maybe it's part of maybe it's the holidays. Maybe, like I said, it's seasonal affect disorder. People are depressed because it gets dark early. It's cold out, right? And we all seek like creature comforts when it's cold, when it's dark, right? And I think that's just human nature, right? And um, Black Hoodie season was the thought that like, for a special motivated group among us, when everyone else sort of runs and hides, right? We sort of embrace that natural hardship and like sort of double down on our ambitions, right? So the idea is like, here's this garment that you're wearing out in the world because it's cold out, and it's got a hood so you can pull it up, and the hood's almost like blinders, right? But then also it's like it's a manifestation of a worldview, and the thought that like, okay, um, things are challenging and difficult in this moment, and in this sort of in a situation where others might turn away from those challenges and from that difficulty, I'm going to embrace them and go into it,
That's
head
awesome.
first, and sort of allow it to be a part of the philosophy that makes me stand apart. And it's like, it's like in the gym, right? Like the idea of when you lift hard, you push yourself, it hurts, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's why would any sane person do that, right? But you realize that like, okay, so some of that pain and that challenge, there's growth to come from it, right? So, and once you realize that, now you're not scared of it anymore, and you embrace it. So it's a little bit of that as well, right? Like when it's dark and it's cold, and your impulse is to um, move away from the challenge, run away from the challenge. Instead, embrace it and push forward into it.
Cool. I know
Yeah,
you're a big pizza pie guy.
I am.
Where's your favorite pizza from?
My favorite pizza, man. It's funny, right? Like you grow up on the East Coast. I live in Jersey now. Most of my life, I lived in Jersey. Um, to me, New Jersey pizza is not the best. There's people who would argue and say it's great. I don't think it's great. I think the concept of like boardwalk pizza. There's pizza at the shore in various places that can be really good. But I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania, and if you Google it, if you read about it a little bit, there's a section of the Scranton area, the greater Scranton area, called Old Forge, Pennsylvania, and there are multiple pizza places in that general region that, in my opinion, is the best pizza in the world. And it's just it could be in the water. They say that like matters with bread and bagels and
Yeah.
stuff. So maybe part of it is in the water, the the composition of the tap water. But then sort of the blend of cheeses they use and the way they make the sauce, and then the way they cut the pizza. Like one of the main go-to pizzas in that part of the world is the Sicilian, which
Mm,
is
yeah.
rectangular, and it's um, and it's cut, into slices that are rectangular also. And the funny thing about it is that like everywhere else in the world, it's a pie and slices, but there it's a tray of pizza, and they're called cuts. So it's a tray of
That's
pizza,
cool.
and it's got like 12 cuts of pizza. So yeah, so that in my opinion is the best pizza in the world. I know people from Brooklyn, New York would say Brooklyn. There's places in Connecticut that are world renowned in terms of being great pizza, and I don't doubt for a second that the Brooklyn pizza and the Connecticut pizza that I've had are amazing and incredible. But I still say Scranton's the best pizza in the world.
That's
And
awesome.
if for whatever reason you find yourself on the road in Northeast Pennsylvania, remember that, and shout out to me, and I'll let you know
Will
where to go.
do. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, last one. We're gonna
Yeah.
time travel back.
Okay.
1986. You got your first
Okay.
pair of Jordans and your first rap tape. What were
Yes.
they?
So my first pair of Jordans was the actual Jordan ones, right? They were the red, white, and black Jordan ones,
Nice.
right? And I was at this strip mall in Scranton, and it was like a couple weeks out from Christmas, and I talked my mom into buying them, and they were on like clearance. It was like a shoe store, not just a sneaker store. It was like a general shoe store, and they had the Jordans, and they were on clearance. And I want to say, bro, they were like $50 or less than $50, $35,
That's a steal.
right? And at the time, they, you and I might know how special they were, but rest of the world, they were just another sneaker, and this
Yeah.
shoe store wasn't selling them fast enough, so here they are on clearance. So I talked my mom into getting me the red, white, and black Jordan ones for like $35, and I had them, Christmas '86. That's what I believe was Christmas '86. Christmas '86. That's what I was rocking, and I've picture evidence to prove it. And then my first rap tape ever was Run DMC, King of Rock. And the funny thing is that, I was a little kid, and it's like, I joke around and I say, like, that's 1986. And once again, my mom, the role my mom played, she bought the Jordans, she bought the weights at the mall, right?
Yeah.
She bought the hip hop, she bought the first rap tape. Like, that was all my mom. And like, like, you look at my mom and you meet my mom, and she's just the sweetest, and she's very smart and sort of like refined. And you would never think like that's the lady who bought you your Jordans, bought your weight set, bought
That's
you the
cool.
first hip hop tape. But she's always supported me and believed in me and sort of like helped guide me without ever trying to make me be somebody I wasn't. Right. So
Yeah.
like she would always encourage my interests. So yeah, that first hip hop tape was Run DMC King of Rock, and then she also got me Run DMC Raising Hell. And I joke around, and I say like, all right, that's '86, which is 36 years ago, as ridiculous as that seems. And um, I've listened to hip hop every single day since then. Swear to
What an
God.
impact. That's
Yeah,
insane.
like that one tape in 1986, and every single day of my life in those 36 years, I've listened to hip hop, and it's like it's the soundtrack to my life, and it's been in the background of everything that I've done, or every experience that I've been through for those 36 years. And it started with that tape, just like those weights in my bedroom, just like that first pair of Jordans on clearance at a strip mall in Scranton. It's like, it's wild.
You need a G-code playlist on
Well,
Spotify.
man, you're right. We need that on Spotify, but on iTunes and SoundCloud, there are
Oh.
multiple mixtapes.
Okay, actually, there was one on
Yes.
the Go Hard website, I think, and I think you
Yes,
had
there
like some
was.
ASAP Rocky and some stuff on there.
Yes.
I remember I would
Yes.
sit there writing like essays in college, like if GG's to
All
listen
right.
to this, I'm gonna listen to this.
All right. So what you got to do is you got to go to the GCode Nutrition, either on iTunes or SoundCloud.
Okay.
And there's hours of music there already, curated.
All right, I'm gonna check it out. I just
For
got an
your
iPhone.
enjoyment. And I mean, I want to say maybe like a minimum of maybe like 8 mixtapes. So
Sweet.
probably
Yeah.
like at least 10 hours of listening. So and stuff from sort of like a broad spectrum of time. And we had a few of them I made myself personally, right? And then Sko made several, and Dirt definitely made one. And then our other buddy of ours was like who's helped with the brand in a bunch of ways. And this was like a cool contribution he did, but he's like very much just a music aficionado and a hip hop head. And he made multiple tapes. So there might be 12 mixtapes on there. So if you need
Right
a
on.
playlist, man, like you got probably a day's worth of listening at least, man. Several car rides worth of listening. So please go check
Sweet.
that out.
Will do.
Please
I
go
just
check
got
it
an
out.
iPhone for the first time, and it's been quite the struggle, but I'll
Right.
check that out.
Awesome, man. Oh,
Well, do
well,
you thank you so much.
congratulations on that iPhone. Congratulations
Yeah.
on the iPhone. I mean,
So where can people connect with you?
I was just gonna say those smartphones and that technology, it's got a lot of drawbacks, and there's a lot of ways that
Yeah.
it does us a disservice, but it also opens up the world to us in a way that, I mean,
This right here.
only being born in '94, even you just being born in '94, that still never seemed possible. So it's like it's pretty crazy, you know. So it's
Yeah.
like, can we use it for good and not evil? You know, that's
Yeah.
all.
I mean, look at us right now, this conversation because of it, right?
Amazing. It's amazing. You know, it's just they're incredible things in our daily lives. I talk about like streaming stuff and on demand, streaming music and streaming, you know, TV shows and films and stuff. And the thought that if you had told me 30 years ago or 20 years ago, right? Like if you told us 20 years ago that anything you want to watch at any time, you can watch right now,
That's insane.
or any song you want to hear, you could hear right now. And you don't have to have a hard copy of it or anything. And there's nothing involved. Like you can have that thing immediately. Like that is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
and talk about like taking stuff for granted. Like you take those like technological advances of the past couple decades for granted. Like it just seemed like for my kids, that just seems normal to them. I'm like, this is so abnormal. This is so absurd, you know, that
Yeah.
this technology exists. And it's like, it's just part of our everyday life now. It's insane.
But
I'm sorry you're asking me.
No, yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah.
This thing kind of lags. It's
Man, I could go forever. I could talk all day.
Oh.
So you got to cut me off at a certain point.
Oh, well, I just know you're a busy guy. You got a lot going on.
Of course.
And definitely have to have you on again. But how can people connect with you and support you and GCode?
Oh man, well, you know, we're at GCode Nutrition on Instagram. I'm at the real G Diesel on Instagram. My name is Greg Santarsiero. You can find me on Facebook if you so desire to be my friend on Facebook. You can meet me there. At gcodenutrition.com, you can buy all of our products directly. That's still the source for all of our stuff. And if you go to a gym or if you go to a supplement store in your general neck of the woods, and it's the kind of place where you frequent and you feel is worthwhile, you should ask for our brand there, because still to this day, man, we talk about all these technological advances. There's still nothing more powerful than word of mouth, right? So if there's something that you love and believe in, spread the word. So anybody who likes our message or likes our brand or who has the opportunity to enjoy our products, you know, asks for them wherever you buy your supplements, wherever wherever you pursue your dreams, ask for our stuff, man. And we would love to be a part of your little neck of the woods as well, you know?
For sure. Well, thank you so much, G. It's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate your time.
Bro. Thank you for including me in this journey of yours.